Ready to light that fire by doing the things that make you come alive? Welcome to Health Raisers, a podcast for wise women. I'm your host, Dr. Nadine. I left a soul-crushing medical career full of bad news and evolved into a joyful health integration coach, helping hundreds of women find their healthy. You're more than your dress size. Stop putting up with toxic relationships, swallowing your true emotions, and sacrificing your mental health. Stop using your body as a battlefield. You're always giving. You deserve to put yourself first, not just for your sake, but for those you love. Wise women, let's make ourselves a priority right now. It's time to raise some health together. Hello, wise women. Welcome to my virtual living room where we have today's guest, Zansios, who is a registered nurse with nearly a decade of experience in reproductive health. Boy, do we need people that are focusing on us finally. But the really unique thing about Nurse Al is that in the summer of 2024, she founded the Period Academy. It's an initiative aimed at empowering and educating young kids about menstrual health. She's a mother of 2 young daughters who will one day experience having to explain their own menstrual journeys. So she's very passionate about creating a future where all young people have the knowledge and confidence to navigate reproductive health with ease. I'm so pleased to have you here today, Al.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. This is very exciting.
So let's get into the genesis of this thing. How did you start it? What sparked the idea? What compelled you not just to have the idea, but to actually put it into action and establish the Period Academy?
Totally. So many things kind of started to drive the idea and make it bigger and bigger. My experience working in reproductive health, I have always this underlying tone of a lot of lack of education with my patients when I see them, later on in their lifetime. Maybe they're having their babies or whatever it might be. And then my 2 kids, I have 2 daughters who were born with little, baby uteruses and uteri. I don't even know the plural for a uterus, but they're going to experience their periods one day. And I have always been very transparent about anatomy, periods, since they could chase me into the bathroom and crawl after me. My kids know a lot about periods and they're 4 and 6. And it's because they've been exposed to it from a very young age. And what I learned very quickly is that is not all households. Most households actually don't have those conversations, aren't as transparent. And I started to learn that because I'd have parents all the time start asking me, how can I get this conversation started with my kids? Like, what do you think I should start doing? My kid is 8. Should I start this conversation now? And my answer is always just start it as early as you can. There's never too soon to start communicating with your children. And then lastly, I was once 11 and had a period and was blindsided. Mm-hmm. And a lot of women say that from their early childhood experiences when they have their first cycle. And that to me is such a disservice to our kids for them to have such a life-altering moment happen with no education, no preparation, no communication. It doesn't have to be that way. And I think that it is that way because we don't have standardized, comprehensive sex education, reproductive education, menstrual education in schools across America. It's very limited. And the states that do force and mandate that education, it's so limited. So limited. It's sometimes even just a 1-hour conversation about everything. Well, my period talk, the Period Academy, when I do a teaching session, my entire session just about periods is an hour. And it's not even enough in that hour. There's so much more. The communication has to continue on. So a lot of reasons. And then I came home one day and I said to my partner, I said, I think we need to start teaching more kids about periods, not just our kids, but other people's kids. And I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I want to do it. And my partner was just like, that's a great idea. Like, and he really elevated the idea and really helped me to create what the Period Academy has become, and had like the business side of things, and I was the health reproductive nurse side, and now, yeah, and now we have this great company, and it's just been so humbling, and also just being in those spaces with those little kids is really special. And I see a transformation happening, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how can I get more kids faster? So it's been great.
I love everything you said, and a lot of it resonated. You know, my grandmother, I would ask questions, and she was just way too embarrassed to say anything. I just remember she would just get really embarrassed. And so, for whatever reason, you couldn't ask her personal questions like that. She wasn't comfortable. My mother, also uncomfortable with discussing, our bodies and what to expect and all that with us. We had an aunt who did it. And then when I had my own children, being a physician who's retired now, I thought, like you said, it's a disservice to our girls. And not to say that there's malintent on my mother didn't mean it, my grandmother didn't mean it in a bad way. I'm sure a lot of our matriarchs who feel uncomfortable, it's not like they're doing it from a place of malice, but for some reason the discomfort is there. And so I wanted to make it less of a big deal and less embarrassing. Is it comfortable to talk to your little kids about sex and their bodies? No, it's not necessarily fun, but I also didn't want them to have the experience that you mentioned, being blindsided. I mean, it's your body and you have no idea what's happening. That's really scary. So I did it from and I wonder, I'm hearing this from you a little bit, maybe from a healthcare person's perspective, if having the information and dealing with it on a regular basis makes it a little less stigmatized, a little less shameful, and more practical, more this is life kind of thing. Because what I did was I talked to them about things, yes, about their bodies. And when it was time to have the talk, I had a book ready to go. I had a child-friendly book with a lot of illustrations and simple yet direct language ready to go. And sure enough, I'll never forget it. It was a summer, and my younger one, you and I talked a little bit before this about how our kids can be who they'll be later on in life. Let me tell you, the younger one was always the one who was more comfortable with the question why. Not to say that my older one isn't. She's a scientist, but she just wasn't as comfortable with the necessarily emotionally charged things as the younger one was. So the younger one's like, ready. What is this? What is sex? And I just remember going, ready for you. We went back to where we were staying, and I told my husband I was about to have the talk. He hightailed it out of there with a big grin on his face. I just saw his smile as he ran past me out of the room as quickly as possible. But, I did it. I sat down and I had the conversation with him, because I think it's important to have a figure in your life. And this is where I'm so happy to hear you're providing the service. And, but it's important to have that person, that adult in your life who has the information, and you can trust them and you can be open. Like, you please come and talk to me about this. I don't want you to go to your friends and find out weird things, or even nowadays, because I'm old, but like nowadays,
everything's
I don't think
online.
I want you to go. I don't want you to do that. Yeah. So
Oh,
I
so
want to I want to hear a little bit from you about who has approached you, or who makes the inquiries to come to the Period Academy to bring their daughters, their granddaughters. Do you find it's hard for matriarchs and families to teach this?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So because of the way our educational system is structured, especially in the public systems, this is going to inherently fall on the parents, the caregivers, the aunties, the tias. And so that is what we can't avoid. And they start to see it when their kids start to hit puberty, because puberty starts before you have a period. You're going to start to notice signs of puberty in your child: breast buds, pubic hair development, underarm hair development, major growth spurts, even vaginal discharge. You're going to notice those things before you have a first period. And so you're going to start to think in your head, this is a thing now, and it's on me now. And so a lot of the times when I get, somebody reaching out to me, I start with like simple tips and tricks of just how to increase exposure in your home around the topic so that we can start to destigmatize it. And you said this earlier, but like we need to start to just make it very normal. It's just part of our life. Half of the world has a period. And so I just start to tell people, the first thing you can do, and if you're going to come to a session, that's great. We're going to get into the nitty gritty. And one thing I'll say is like, there's something really lovely, I think, for the parents at the sessions, because the information is coming from a health professional. I use accurate terminology, and it's easy for me to talk about. I know that that's not the same for all parents. And you're in the health field too, right? Like vagina, vulva, anus, like those are not uncomforting words for me because I use them every day in my clinic setting, right? And so, but I can understand that that might not be the same for all parents. And so that's something that's important, that like when we're in session, because I'm so confident in how I teach, it really puts the kids and the parents at ease. And it's like, oh, this is not new and weird and funny. And the kids giggle. We giggle. We have fun with it. I tell them, at the beginning of every talk, I do a big disclaimer. This is a safe space that you are in right now. I'm going to show you pictures. I'm going to use terminology. I'm going to show you things that you've never maybe seen before. And it can make you feel really weird in your bodies and really, really weird in your heads. And that's normal. The first time I talk about a vulva and all the parts of their body might be the first time they see that. They've probably never looked and explored it themselves, because I'm trying to get kids in at 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, because you can start your period as early as 8 years old. You don't want to wait too long. You don't want it to pop up out of nowhere and not be ready for it.
And now, here's an ad from our sponsor. In the mood for coffee, tea, yummy pastries, or cool swag? My friends at Infusco have got you covered. Infusco Coffee Roasters is a cozy neighborhood coffee joint in Sawyer and St. Joseph, Michigan. Infusco stands for a healthy community. They craft irresistible seasonal drinks, sourcing local artisans' products. The flavors shine from quality ingredients, and their beans are roasted on site. They do not hide behind tons of sugar. Every time I go, I'm greeted by my name with a smile. Bad service is just non-existent. It feels like stepping into a friend's living room. They keep it personal. Old school, eclectic coffee mugs on the wall, fun merch, including stickers designed by artists, t-shirts, and sweatshirts. It's the perfect place to get to know your neighbors and chat with tourists. You will always find people deep in conversation. Special events keep it fresh. Community, health, the heart of Sawyer. That's Infusco. I hope to meet you there. It's so interesting too that you said about using the correct terminology. A while back, I take it for granted. And maybe you did too in some ways, but people don't, I heard somewhere where women don't necessarily know the correct terms for the female female genitalia, where things are in relation to one another. So then that makes it difficult for you then if you don't know those
Mm-hmm.
things to communicate what's happening to you, or if something is right, or if something is wrong, if something is normal, if something is abnormal. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
I really agree
Yeah.
with that,
Yeah.
teaching the correct terminology and not being embarrassed by it.
Yeah. And it's just, I think we're seeing a movement and a shift in like, we don't use nicknames for body parts because there's also a lot of studies that show, if kids can appropriately name their body parts, we can also start to catch sexual assault, sexual abuse
Mm,
earlier.
mm,
Because kids can tell us exactly
mm,
what's happening to their bodies
mm,
and where things are happening, what's happening. And so we've already started to see some like circumstances of like using the right terms with kids and
mm,
how it can be very beneficial.
mm.
And for me, during presentation when I'm with the kids, I'll tell them, you might hear this for this part. But what it really is this, your labial folds on your vulva are a very good example of that. Most people don't call them labial majora, labial
Mm-hmm.
minora, but we call them vaginal lips or the lips of the vagina or whatever, term you want to think of. But I tell the kids that's what you might hear, but these are our labias. You have a majora and a minora, and they're so important because they protect our vaginas, the entrance to your vagina. And so we really kind of do talk about, okay, you might have heard this word, but I want you to hear the right word. And I want you to think about that. And I work in I'm actually in residency to be a nurse midwife. And so my nursing career has very easily and quickly transformed because I fell in love with reproductive health and I want to take care of women and people with uterus. And um, I see just what you said. I see adult women having their babies not know what's going on down there.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not their fault that they
No,
don't know,
no blame, no
right?
blame, but alarming
It's
nonetheless.
right. It is alarming, especially when I'm explaining, how there's a separation between a vaginal hole and a urethral hole, which I have to explain far too often for these
Yeah,
adult women having their
yeah.
babies. And, that to me is our fault as a world, right? Like that's something that I really, and that's a big goal of the Period Academy. It's maybe the too big of a goal, but I just don't think that it has to be that way. I don't think we have to not know what we are and who we are in our bodies. And so when and kind of I segued, but when people ask me what can we start doing, and that's one of the big things, start using the right terminology for your body. Don't make up nicknames. Use the proper terminology with your children, and not only moms, but dads should use the proper terminology too. They should say, okay, you went pee pee. Like you don't really actually wipe your vagina when you go pee pee. You wipe your vulva. You
Mm,
really wipe your urethra, right? Where the pee comes from. And so just trying to encourage kids to know this whole area is your vulva. That's your vulva. And it has all different parts, but the vagina is the inside part. And so I tell parents, start just using the right words, start talking about it, and make sure all the adults in the home, if they're comfortable to talk about it. And and this is something that, I live in a progressive area. I chose a partner who also sees the world in the way I do, as most of us do, right? And when we had daughters, I was very clear with him. I said, you need to know as much as I do about their little bodies because the expectation shouldn't be that I'm always going to be around.
mm,
What if I'm at the
mm,
hospital working
mm,
and, and then they need something? I
mm-hmm,
don't want them to sit there quiet, shut down if there's something that's bothering them because mommy's not home yet. And I'm like, it's his responsibility too. And when I do the talks, I really try to encourage dads to come
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
because I can then give them some of the language to use. And I think it should be an equal kind of, goal in the household that your kids in, because I get the questions. Oh my gosh, I'm not kidding you. When I have, question and answer time, and the kids always start out a little shy, but then once we get going, they get super excited, have tons of questions. They actually do have huge curiosities about this
mm-hmm.
and want the information. They want to learn it. And they're not being forced to be there. But they always ask me, what if my daddy's home and my mommy's not home?
Mm,
And my period starts.
mm.
Or they'll ask, that's one of the big questions I get. And then they'll also ask, but what if my teacher's a boy and I start at school? And that just, it always takes my breath away almost, because in my mind, we've built a world where girls don't feel like they can go to their adult male figures for help. And I know in my household and a lot of households I am familiar with, that's not true. I know those dads would help them. And so I do try to start to say, especially teachers who are working with the age of a kid who's going through puberty and is going to start a period should know how to support those children or direct them to somebody who will be able to help them, right?
Yes.
And I tell the kids that teacher knows how to help you. They know what's coming for you. And for the dads, I tell them, try not to avoid the conversation too much, even though it's probably going to it's going to be difficult. It's a difficult conversation, and to use terminology and to do all those things. But try to be a part of the conversation so that your kid sees you in this equal space with mommy, right? Or what if you have a household with two dads? That's all they know. Or you have a household with two moms. There's so many dynamics. There's a lot of moms that work a lot. We live in this very blended, unique family home structures. And I think you have to start that teaching of your children early on, that you can go to both parents for help.
My daughter and I, the one I just mentioned, the younger one, were having this conversation the other day. And she said to me, I am so happy that you were able to talk to us about our bodies, because if I had relied on school only, I would have been in a lot of trouble, because she just didn't feel like the education was adequate for a woman, for a young girl. So I think knowing, not passing the buck, but I think it takes a community, right? It takes a village. We can't just assume the teacher's going to take care of it. We can't just assume the pediatrician's going to take care of it. Or mom is going to take care of it, or grandma's going to take care of it. I think we have to be really specific. I don't think there's anything wrong with a person not being the point per. We can't be everything to everyone.
Totally.
Agreed to what your point, to be knowledgeable about basic things like our bodies. Yes.
Yeah.
But is everybody, like my husband was just not equipped to be the person. It's just not it's not him. I was much more comfortable doing that. They also had my mother, their grandmother, who with time became more comfortable. As a matter of fact, my youngest daughter's period started at my mother's house. And so my mother was not panicked, but again, she's seasoned by now. It's different, but I do think it's really important for the child to be able to say, this is going to be my person to talk to me about this issue that's so sensitive, where I can open up and ask questions. I do wonder, do you ever get questions about boundaries?
It kind of comes up in a way of how much do I need to care about this? What is the extent? We do get asked often, because it could be, like I said, it could be the first time we're starting to explore these body parts, talk about these kind of bodily functions that are all very physiological, natural functions. But, it could be the first time. I have so many parents leave sessions and pull me aside and say, I learned so much about my body. And I think we do have some boundaries. And I think, and let me know if I'm not answering this question right, but I think some boundaries within my company that I created, the Period Academy, was I am focused solely on puberty changes and the period.
Okay.
And the boundary we had to set was that we aren't talking about sex yet.
Okay.
And a big reason for that is because most of these children will start their period well before they are doing sexual activity or having interest in that, because you can start as early as 8 years old. Yes, most kids are going to start around age 12, but that is even on the national average of sexual activity much earlier. And so that was something that we had to kind of create a very hard line, because for me to convince parents that I was creating a safe space for them and their children, I had to make it very clear that that is kind of a, a line that we drew, that I focus on a period in a sense of like, what is the actual function of it? But I don't talk about that it's the lack of a fertilizing egg. I don't talk about that. We don't need to get into that discussion of like an implantation and fertilization of a zygote and all of that. We don't need to do that yet because they're 8, 9, and 10.
Mm-hmm.
But I teach it in a way of, this is your uterus. I call it the VIP of periods. And you're born with this in your body. And inside the uterus, the inner lining gets thicker. It gets this thick, thick tissue. And then that inner lining falls off the walls of the uterus and it falls out. That's your period. And every, time this happens, it does the same thing. It gets thicker and then it falls out. And then that's when you see it on the outside. And yeah, I leave out the other stuff, even though it is so important. And I do think that this company is probably going to transition into also the sex talk later, because so many people at the end are like, okay, so like, when do we come back in 2, 3 years for
Yeah.
the sex talk? Or
Yeah.
because you got to do the same
Yeah.
thing for the
It's a
next,
it's a natural segue. Yeah.
that's the next thing, right? And I would love for that to happen because gosh, we don't get the sex talk either. And we assume so much. And like you said earlier, like so many kids get their information from peers. And not that that's a bad thing. I think that's a great thing to have your community and learn from each other. But how accurate is it? And and so I think that we can do more and we can give more to our kids, but so much of it falls on the caretakers at home. So much. And that's a lot for parents, I think. Being a parent myself, it's already a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've touched upon this quite a bit, but can you expand about like what would an hour look like with you?
Yeah. So I do my disclaimer, right? I'm like, this is safe. You are safe. You can ask questions if you're comfortable. If you're not comfortable, don't ever feel like I'm never going to point out to you. I'm never going to, make somebody feel like the attention's on them. I want you to do what you need to do to get through this. And I also feel like we created a digital presentation with a lot of really lovely illustrations, and it's fun and it's cutesy, but it's also accurate. And I think you can be cutesy and accurate, right? With what things look like. So it's very cartoon like, but it's accurate cartoons. And so we go through basic anatomy first, because you can't understand your natural physiological process without knowing what you got going on, right? You got to know a little bit about the inside and you got to know a little bit about the outside. And so we go through basic anatomy, and then we go through essentially what I go into is like PMS, premenstrual syndrome. And I start to go into that because of all the symptoms that come with PMS are a lot of the symptoms you have during a period. And so I kind of take us on this journey of like, what are we going to feel leading up to a period? What might you notice, in your body, in your brain, the cramping, the bloating, the headaches, the fatigue. And then I talk about what's normal and what's not normal. And a lot of the presentation touches on that. And you even said it earlier, like, how do we know what's okay and not okay if we don't know the things that are okay first, right? And then we go into what is the actual period. And I have that discussion about, we go back to the uterus and it gets thick and then it falls off the walls of the uterus and then it falls out. And I have great illustrations of a uterine lining getting thicker, falling off the walls of the vagina, falling through. And then, I explain to the kids, and then this is when you're going to see it. And it's going to be on the toilet paper. It's going to be in the toilet, or it's going to be in your underwear. And then we talk about what should it look like and what's normal, not normal for it to look like, right? What kind of colors are you going to see? What kind of, textures are you going to see? And I really go into depth because kids like to know what it's going to feel, see, be like. And we talk about what might it feel like.
Yeah.
Actually, when the blood comes out, sometimes you don't even feel it. Sometimes you do, right? Sometimes you do feel a little pressure. And I talk about when you go pee and you're on your period, because your pelvic floor relaxes, that's when a lot of blood sometimes comes out.
Mm.
And so we kind of go into what does it look like? The texture. It can be sticky. It can be a little bit mucusy. It can be a little bit clumpy. And you can feel pressure. Sometimes you don't even notice it. And then you just go pee and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm on my period. And so we talk about what's normal, what's not normal. And then I go into also what's normal and what's not normal for when you're having your first few periods.
Mm-hmm.
When is it going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
How old are you going to be? A lot of kids want me to tell them exactly when it's going to happen. And gosh, I wish I could, right? And I just say, we can give you some signs to look out for. And those are those puberty signs, right? So we know if a young female starts to notice breast development, that she's probably going to start her period in about 2 to 3 years. Okay. We know that. If they start to notice pubic hair and even a hair here and there, they're going to probably have a period 1 to 2 years from then. That's normal. Huge growth spurt, very out of the ordinary growth spurt. They're probably a year out from a cycle. And then we also know the biggest signifier of a child having their very first period is vaginal discharge, because that's telling us that things are working in there,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If she notices vaginal discharge, and I explain vaginal discharge in great detail because people have a lot of fear around vaginal discharge, I've learned in my work at the hospital with adult women, but also with kids. It's this scary thing, but it's so natural and so
What do you mean by
needed.
scary? What in
I think
particular?
everybody kind of assumes vaginal discharge is is an infection or is something wrong, right? That it
Mm-hmm.
can't be normal. It can't
Mm-hmm.
be just normal vaginal discharge. I
Mm-hmm.
see people in the clinic all the time and their only complaint is just creamy white vaginal discharge. Well, sometimes it might be abnormal. Sometimes you might have bacterial vaginosis because it's got an odor to it or it's got, a high pH or whatever it might be. And I'll explore those things, but it could just be normal vaginal discharge. And sometimes I just need to reassure them of that, right? Even adult women, I just can reassure them. I'm going to look and check everything. I'm going to do all the tests to make sure that if I need to give you something to take care of this, I will. But they also just need reassurance. This is normal. This is normal discharge. And it could be because you're ovulating. It could be because of this and that. And so I really try to teach the kids that this discharge is so, so normal. Don't be scared of it.
Mm.
And you might see it on toilet paper. You might see it in your underwear. Your parents aren't going to be mad at you if there's vaginal discharge in your underwear, because a lot of kids are like, but what is my mom going to think? Is that okay? And I said, that's the biggest signifier. But I also really enforce we're all not going to have the same puberty pathway. We're all not going to have the boobs, the pubic hair, the vaginal discharge. You might skip some boobs and you might go right to the pubic hair. You might not notice the pubic hair or the underarm hair, and you might just have the vaginal discharge. And so it's so hard to give them what their journey is going to be because that's really what they want to know. Can you tell me when? Just tell me when. And so I give them, these are signals. This is the age range. If you start to notice any of these signals, put a little period kit in your backpack. Because most kids, we know this, most kids will start their period at school. The very first one is going to be outside of the home. And that's because kids go to school a lot. They're at school for many hours out of the week.
Okay.
And so we know, or they'll be at a school function, or they'll be at an after school activity that they're signed up for. They'll be at soccer practice. We know kids, we keep our kids busy, right? We love our kids going to school. And so that's where they're going to be more than likely when they have their very first period. They probably won't even be with you. And so I really emphasize talking about having a period kit. And when people do sessions with me, I do give them a period kit to get started with. And it's got pads in it and a mirror and a moist towelette. And it also has a little card, an encouraging card that you got this, you're going to be okay. And I tell the kids, make sure that you have that in your backpack. Put a spare pair of underwear in there. It's okay if it's in there for 2 years before you have a period, but you have it and you're ready. And that just knowing is there gives you some confidence, right? And then the next part of my presentation is how long is your period going to be? How many days should you bleed for? How many days in between your period? And I reassure kids, it takes years to get this idea of a regular cycle, right? And you know that, but some kids are like, well, I'm on my period every month, getting a period. And that's just not how it works, right? And so I tell them, this is what you should expect. You might have a first period and then months and months and months go by, and then you'll have a second period. And that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself years to get this idea of a regulated period, right? And so we go into that, and then we do a demonstration for the in-person sessions, especially. I have the kids practice putting a pad in underwear because, and I really encourage parents to do this with their kiddos because I don't want my kids having their period for the first time and trying to figure out how to put a pad in underwear for the first time in school, in between periods, or at lunchtime, or whatever it might be, because that is so intimidating for them. And you can even see it when they do it with me. They're like, what do I do with this? And you would be surprised because we, as adult women, have done it for so long,
Okay.
right?
What about tampons?
Tampons. So that's a good question. I usually do instruction on tampons because, so statistically, we know kids will wear pads first and they will wear them for usually a long time, like a very high percentage of children. But they will be forced into tampon usage based off of life situations, right?
Activities like, oh, we're going swimming and I
The
have my
swimming.
period and I want
It's
to be able to
almost
go.
almost always the swimming.
Mm-hmm.
And they are kids still, right? They're 10 years old, 11 years old. They're not going to miss out on swimming. And so a lot of the times kids get forced into tampon usage when they don't maybe feel fully ready for it. And so we do tampon instruction. I focus a lot of my energy on pads because that will be the primary tool for a long time. And then I have actually pelvic models, and I do have the kids do a tampon insertion.
Okay.
And we talk about it. We talk about the best hygienic way to do it. We do talk about, and I emphasize, there's a lot of myths and fear about tampon usage for young girls and young kids about, putting something into the vagina like that. And I talk about how our vaginas are built to be a little bit stretchy. And we talk about how it shouldn't hurt and how to get in a position that feels good to you and different things you can do to make sure it's really comfortable. But I will say the kids have so much fun just like doing the pads and doing the tampons that like they'll do it a whole bunch of times because it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then when they go to do it for the first time in their own bodies, it's not the first time they've done it. They've done it in another way, right? In this like kind of like training way almost. Because, as surprising as it is, like people putting in a tampon for this first time, they will put them in their anus. They will. They also will attempt to put them in their urethra because they're not aware of what's going on down there, right?
Shudder.
They really will. Because they don't know. And sometimes pads will get put on the wrong way. So sticky side will be up. Or it will be put in the back of the underwear and it won't even be where the blood's coming out. So there's so many little things that we take for granted.
And this is a funny little caveat, but it speaks to the overwhelm because I don't know if you've done this. I'm sure you have. You go to your typical Walgreens or CVS and you stand in the feminine products aisle and it is vast. I mean, there's so much choice, right? So my daughter, my eldest one, showed me a funny internet thing. I don't know if it was a TikTok or on Instagram, but it was essentially a guy, a girlfriend complaining about asking her boyfriend to go out and bring her feminine hygiene products. So she said, please get me a pad with wings.
Oh, no.
Or pads with wings. And he brought a box of pads and some chicken wings. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's funny. But at the same time, in the back of your head, you're going, oh, gosh, well, how would he know? And I was kind of asking myself, like, even as a woman sometimes, and even as one who is experienced with her own body and everything, do you teach about how to pick the correct products for yourself? Because there's a lot.
It is. It's so overwhelming. We actually started, and we're very in the beginning stages, but we did encounter this company that makes pads for young kids, and that's all they do.
Okay.
They make a pad that's built start to finish for a young child who's starting their period for the first time. And they built them in a way, and it's called Lilith's. and they are out of the UK, but they do sell on Amazon, and they want to try to sell more in the US because all of our big brands here in the US, Tampax and those kind of brands, they took their products and just made them smaller to fit a child, a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, or 12-year-old. And so I do point that out, and I give all the kids like a handful of Lillet pads because I know they're going to fit them, and I know they're going to fit in their underwear. By no means do they need to continue to use that product, but we try to give them access to find those products. But I do tell them, and then tampons too. You use the thinnest, most, tiny tampon because girls, kids at this age are, even though it feels like a lot, even for adult women, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so heavy. But what I expect is like 2 to 3, maybe 2 to 4 tablespoons of blood during a period, but over the whole time. And when you're thinking in your head, that's not that much, right? That's just like 2 to 4 tablespoons, And so it's not that much. And so I do try to emphasize to the kids, and they got little bitty underwears, right? They got their 10-year-old underwear. And so just to find something that fits, don't assume you can use your mom's products or your high school sister's products because they're probably not going to work for you. And I encourage, when you do encounter, and we were giving out tampons in the period kits because I was getting for the kids the tiniest tampons. But I also realized and was very realistic of like, this could be years off, and I don't want them to feel like they need to use this yet. And so we kind of go back and forth. Sometimes I throw the tampons in there and sometimes I don't. But yes, I do emphasize products to use, where to place them in your underwear. We even talk about, how do you sleep? Do you sleep on your belly at night? Well, then right before you go to bed, that pad you put in, you might want to scoot it a little bit forward, right? Because we all know we'll wake up and we were on our back and our blood and we leaked to the back. And so I do talk about those things. Like, you'll start to learn your body. And I talk about, you're going to leak. You're going to have leaks. I am a 38-year-old woman. I've had many, many, many periods and I still leak.
A really important point. And again, it's destigmatizing and taking away the shame of, we've all seen like the scenes in the movies where the little girl gets her period. She's in school and she gets up and she's tying a sweater around her back, or, and the other kids are giggling. And it's just kind of like,
I know. It's like infuriating, but it's also like, what else could it be? Because there's such a huge lack of knowledge that, I think a lot of kids react in the way of like, things are silly, and that's kind of normal for them, right? When it's new, when it's something new. But I talk about, leaking is normal. You're going to misgauge what you need for products. I talk a lot about pelvic hygiene. I think this presentation, this age range is a good time, especially because they're all starting puberty, right? These kids I'm teaching, it's a great time for me to also teach them about pelvic hygiene, because I talk about pelvic hygiene with every single patient I have at the clinic and at the hospital, wiping front to back. And if it's hard to wipe front to back, wipe front and then wipe your back. And, using 100% cotton underwear, try to avoid thong underwear because, it really introduces a lot of bacteria to the vulva and to the vagina. If you are exercising and really sweaty, take a shower soon after. And then the biggest thing is, we've been told that we need to use fragrance-full products. Douching. Don't douche. Our bodies, our reproductive organs are self-cleaning. Don't douche. But don't use soap inside your vagina. I have a lot of clinic patients who will have infections because I find out they're inserting soap into their vulvas, into their vaginas, into their labial folds to wash themselves. And that will give you an infection. It will definitely give you irritation, right?
Well, it's interesting, just teaching
it.
Yeah, it's like learning that, we have microorganisms within our bodies that are there on purpose to help, like the microbiome. We have more information about that now. There's there's all kinds of things in your mouth that need to be there. Your vagina is colonized for a reason. It's another way to protect yourself. So I think this idea of cleaning that out or removing it is false.
Oh, yeah. But we we don't most females don't see it that way. They really don't. They use soaps, they use fragrances, they use a lot of sprays. Douching, although is a very highly researched practice, that is something that is definitely not recommended on, in healthcare. It's not recommended to douche, but a very large population of females do it. And sometimes I have to, really ask, if you're douching, we got to try not to douche, even if it makes you feel clean or makes you feel a certain way. Let's find another way for you to get that feeling, right? What is something else we could do to find that cleanliness feeling? Adult women, I remind them, try to urinate after sexual intercourse soon after. That will help clean. Try to take just a water rinse. You don't need soap. And I tell the kids in my sessions, you don't ever need to put soap down there, but what you do need to do is just rinse with water. And that's important. Just rinse with water. That's
Mm-hmm.
all you need.
Mm-hmm.
And this age of kids, they start to get the hormones start going, right? And so they start to have smells. They start to have underarm smells. They start to have BO. They start to have those things. And so I think they really enjoy hearing like that those things are normal.
Mm-hmm.
You might have to shower more frequently. You might have to wash your hair more than you usually do. You might start to notice I have odors. And I try to explain to them some of those odors are super normal, but
Mm-hmm.
some might be bothersome. And there are ways we can combat that, right? To make you feel comfortable in your body. And so we talk about pelvic hygiene towards the end of the presentation. And I also, and I do this one thing at the very end of the presentation, I really emphasize building your little community in that you could be a really big ally in your school system, you're on your basketball soccer team, if you have this knowledge that you can share with friends, but also if you have like pads to share with friends. And I always make a joke at the end of the presentation, like, there is nothing more awesome than being the chick in the bathroom having a pad when
Yeah.
somebody needs it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when somebody's like, oh, shoot, I started my period and I don't have anything. There's no better feeling in the world. I'm telling you, to be like, I do, I have
Mm-hmm.
something and I can
Mm-hmm.
save you right now because I know that feeling of
Mm-hmm.
like vulnerability, right? And to be like, I got a pad, I got a tampon, like, which one would you like? It's
Mm-hmm.
just the best. And so I tell kids, like, even if you're not friends and a girl's having a hard time or started her period or figuring out, like, be the cool girl, help her out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really resonates with the kids because they're like, okay, like, that sounds really cool to just like be the one that like knows some stuff and has the pads and can be like, oh, I know all about that. Like, you're going to be okay. Here's a pad. And so we talk about that at the end. And then we also talk about, support you can get from adults and that all adults are willing to help you. And if they don't have the answers, they can direct you to somebody who will. And that's a lot for those kids that are going to start their periods at school who get really overwhelmed by that.
I also have no doubt that you talk about, and when you mention hygiene, how often to change these products too.
Yes, yes, yes. And we talk about pads, tampons. I do grace over period underwear because they're becoming very popular
Mm-hmm.
in young girls and they are wonderful for a
Mm.
young 12-year-old girl. They're really a great tool. And I love period underwear. And so we do talk about period underwear and we talk about how frequently you should change them, washing your hands, nothing ever goes in the toilet, things like that, just
Mm-hmm.
practical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you never don't want to keep anything in past 8 hours. And I also am like, if you're somebody who likes period underwear, and I tell them, you're going to find what you like and don't like. Like for me, I always use like for me, because I do this too. And even if I'm on my period during a session, I'm like, I don't know, I'm having a really light day. So I'm actually wearing period underwear. And that's all I need. And I'm going to make sure that I don't wear this longer than 8 hours. And then I'm going to rinse it off and I'm going to throw it in the wash. And I think like how open I am about it really puts people at like, oh, okay, we're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I even in daily life, if I walk to the bathroom to go change my pad, I don't put my pad in a pocket anymore. I realized I don't need to do that. This is not a scary thing. And I'm a very rare person that could probably do that. But because of that, I feel like it's my responsibility to try to reduce stigma. I'm going to change my pad. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a weird thing. It's not
Mm-hmm.
weird. I have it in my hand. I don't need to hide it. And I think that that's something I try to emphasize with the kids of make it this very conversational thing and fun thing with them.
Well, this conversation has been great. I do wonder. So the kids who come to you
Uh-huh.
pre-period, already have periods, a mixture?
It's as of now, and we started the company last summer, and as of now, it is almost always kids who have not quite yet started,
Okay.
but we can feel it coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I do ask the kids all of their ages, and everybody's usually around age 10. Not always, but I do try to encourage to come when they're 8 because they can start to notice these things as early as 8. So yeah, everybody's usually pre-period, but I do have kids that are having their maybe had a cycle or had a couple,
Mm-hmm.
and they learn a lot too about like
Mm-hmm.
products to manage and things like
Sure.
that. And I think they also get really reassured.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also, when I have a kid who already had a cycle, when they get to raise their hand and be like, oh, I actually started in like a room full of 12 other girls. And like, I noticed I like this, or I noticed I do this. And you just see them light up and feel empowered in that body in that moment of like, this is a place I could be proud of my body and proud of myself that like, yeah, I had a period. And it's like this camaraderie is just so quickly built in those rooms. And it's wonderful. It's a
Mm.
wonderul feeling.
I love this. I'm
Yeah.
so happy you're doing
Yeah.
this work.
No, thank you.
I wish I wish for a menopause academy myself, but
You know what?
let's
So many moms ask me. They're always like, okay, when are we coming back for the perimenopause menopause talk? And I'm like,
exactly.
you know what? You're onto something. And I
Yeah.
think that's in the books,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah. It's
just
needed.
education in general,
Mm-hmm.
right? Education in general is what we need for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
I also encourage dads to come to talks, but brothers, siblings, come. Yeah, you're going to feel weird. It's going to make you uncomfortable, but why not come? Because you have sisters, you have mommies, you have aunties, you have friends who are girls. And if you could be an ally and if you could be a support person
Yes.
for them, like if I had sons, I would want nothing more for them to support the women in their life, the girls in their life who are having periods. That's that duty of those parents for kids, who are boys, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have one more question. I ask
Okay.
every guest,
Oh,
and
yes, yes.
that question is, what is your personal definition of what it means to be healthy?
Yeah, I mean, and I thought about this because I listened to a few episodes and I was like, oh, this is gonna come. So I could take a totally clinical approach to this answer because I am a clinician and I work in healthcare and I've been a nurse and I've been in this field for a long time. But I'm also a mom first, and I really identify as a mom first. And so for me, when I think about healthy for my kids, the way I want to teach them and how I want to teach kids, because a big part of my job has become teaching kids now, I think overall good health is directly correlated to happiness,
Hmm.
directly correlated to body positivity.
Hmm.
How do you feel about yourself? Because if we feel good in this body, you're probably healthy. You probably are.
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean that you're, super skinny, super overweight. You have this issue or that issue, because I do think you can be a type 1 diabetic. You can be somebody that has some sort of underlying condition, but still be healthy, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Managing your symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
managing your day to day life. But if you feel happy in your body, in my opinion, that is health. That's healthiness. If you love your body, the foods you put into it, what you do with your body, how you challenge your body, and you just like love yourself, that to me is good health. And that's what I want my kids to know and kids to believe too.
That's a beautiful answer. I've never heard anyone put it that way before. It's beautiful, and it directly ties to what your mission is. And in order to
Mm-hmm.
love something, you gotta have a good understanding of it too. To
Yeah.
understand our bodies,
Mm-hmm.
especially being in the stage I'm menopausal, but
Yeah.
it becomes challenging when you're going
Yeah.
through this to love a body that's really not great. You're dealing with
Right.
all these physical symptoms. It's so different for everyone. The
Mm-hmm.
time period of perimenopause is just very different, wildly different. Um, but so then it becomes challenging to love the body that you're in because you feel like it's betraying you.
Yeah.
But if we can have knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
community and talk about this with our communities in a more comfortable fashion, then I think
Yeah.
it will become easier to love a
Yeah.
body that might be just kind of going through what she needs to go through, but it'll
Yeah.
be okay.
Yeah. And I think like for people getting into their perimenopause, menopause years, I think if you're not loving what's your body's doing in that time, your mind's doing at that time, and you're really sitting with it for years and years, I think we need to start to intervene, right? And I think we've been made to think that we can't do anything about
Mm-hmm.
perimenopause symptoms. I think
Mm-hmm.
we've been made to think you just have to like grit through your vasomotor insane hot flashes,
Well,
waking
it's
up in the middle
because
of the night in a puddle of
because
sweat.
it's shame, and it's
Hmm.
I'm not a woman anymore. There's so many things that you think
Yeah.
going through the changes that your body is having, and
Yeah.
I'm less than now, and what's my role? What's my importance? And
Yeah. Yeah.
um, why does my husband look so comfortable and I feel so miserable?
Yeah.
These things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting.
And I think, find ways. Maybe it does need to be interventions to get to a place where you feel happy in your body and with yourself. And then you'll feel more healthy. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it all kind of comes together because if you're feeling in good health, you're probably happy. And if you're really happy in your life and in your body, you're probably healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I would and I would encourage if there are people listening who are experiencing perimenopause, menopause, to advocate for yourself
Mm-hmm.
in those clinical situations.
Mm-hmm.
Do not sit for years and years and be miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Go advocate for yourself. That might mean an SSRI. That might mean, something for the hot flashes. There are tools, estrogen supplementation, things that are really, really changing lives. They really are life changing. They can be. And, you're going to weigh your benefits and risks, right? This is a whole nother conversation. But, I just always tell patients, advocate for yourself. I'm going to advocate for every single one of my patients. I fight for my patients, but the best advocate is going to be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really, really important.
And I
Yeah.
love that you're having these girls and their communities advocate for themselves by learning
Mhm.
about their bodies and learning about a
Yeah.
very natural process, and
Mhm.
being prepared for it. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank you. This was so wonderful. Thank you so much.
Wise women, move from last place to first place in your life. Stop using your body as a battlefield. Let's raise health together with a customized health plan just for you. Contact me at npkhealthintegration.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.